Joining me right now is the Secretary of U.S. Transportation. He is also acting NASA Administrator, Shawn Duffy. Secretary Duffy, it's great to have you on this program this morning. Thanks so much for being here.
It's great to be with you, Maria. Thanks for having me.
And I want to start off with what you're hearing from companies today. You're talking with producers all the time. We just got the producer price index that was higher than expected. How would you view this number here, up 0.9% versus an estimate of 0.2%?
So in the corporations that I'm speaking to, the CEOs that I talk to, Maria, again, this has not been an issue that's raised. So if it's in the construction side of transportation, I hear a lot about the delays, and time is money, and the costs have gone up over the course of the last several years if these projects didn't start turning dirt right away. So I hear that. But on the airlines and other places, I'm not hearing the concern on the producer side. And by the way, on the airline front, you look at the decrease in energy, saving real money for airlines. And so, listen, I was with the president last night. Again, there's a philosophy that a lot of the costs of the tariffs, which is where the left will go on this conversation, is being eaten by the corporations that import. But also in the U.S., they're absorbing a lot of the additional costs. And so the question will be, if we have increases on the producer side, does this go to the consumer side? And again, we haven't seen that yet. And I think the administration feels pretty good about where we're at, that these tariffs aren't going to impact the end consumer.
Well, by the way, I think this report is telling us just that. I mean, we just had the CPI out earlier in the week. The consumer price index was actually better than expected, although on the core side, we did have some spikes in certain things, but there were also things in that consumer price index that were actually showing negative performance. So maybe this PPI report tells us that companies are eating the tariffs. It's the companies that are paying for these tariffs, not the consumer, because you got a spike on the producer level, but not on the consumer level.
100%. And what it's going to do is, I think, if again, we have this broader conversation around tariffs, what the president wants is more companies to produce in America, to drive American jobs. Let's make more things in this country, and then we have less impact from tariffs, and we don't have to have the conversation about who's going to eat the cost of tariffs, because we make these products in America again and again. I can't thank the president enough for driving this policy, because he cares about the American worker, which we haven't had presidents or Congresses that have thought like that for a very long time. Thank God we have one right now.
Yeah, and when you strip out energy and food, it was actually up 0.6%, but inflation held steady in July at the consumer level at 2.7%, and yet on the producer level, we're seeing this spike. I want to move on to an executive order that the president signed yesterday to boost the U.S. commercial space industry, enable competition, and streamline launch regulations by 2030. Secretary, you fast-tracked plans to build a nuclear reactor on the moon by 2030. I've been reporting on the importance of space and the race to beat China and Russia. I've got a new Fox Nation special called The Enemy Above, and it is streaming right now on Fox Nation. Here's a clip.
You know, our modern way of life, Maria, has become dependent on space capabilities.
The U.S. Space Command is responsible for everything more than 100 kilometers above the Earth. General Stephen Whiting is the four-star general in charge. So it sounds like a war could start in space or extend in space.
Yeah, Maria, we certainly don't want that to happen. It's our job here at U.S. Space Command and our goal to maintain space as a peaceful place and to reestablish deterrence. But if a war were to start, we are concerned it could start in space or extend into space.
So, Secretary, you were at the signing yesterday with President Trump, and I like to say that most people don't understand why space is so important. I get it now. It's where our satellites are. And any adversary who wants to get adversarial with the United States, they take down our satellites. They're turning the lights out. They're turning GPS off.
Huge, yeah, it's a huge problem. So let's take a step back, Maria. By the way, great special. Thank you for doing it and driving how important space actually is to our everyday part of our lives. But we just had today the 1,000th private space launch. And so that took 35 years to get us to 1,000 launches. We think with this CEO, in less than 5 years, we'll get the next 1,000 launches from the private sector, which is fantastic. By the way, we used to own all those private launches, again, starting with SpaceX. We only have 60% of the launches right now in America. And the reason we don't have more launches is because of the rules, regulations, and red tape that come around the launch, right? We want to do things safely. And so with me at both DOT, which has FAA, and NASA, we have to work as one government. And what was happening was you have regulation from FAA and regulation from NASA and regulation from Commerce. And we want to speak with one government, streamline that red tape, reduce costs, and allow all of the launches to happen in this country. We want American companies and foreign companies to be launching off of our pods and pads in America. And so we're going to streamline that approach. And again, you talk about how important space is. It is critical. And again, we want to drive peace. We don't know where other countries are going to be at in space. They could see a strategic military component to space, which we want to deter. The moon, you mentioned the moon. We want to put a nuclear reactor on the moon because at the south pole of the moon, I don't think a lot of people understand this, there's ice. Ice means water, which means we can inhabit the southern pole of the moon. You need an energy source. So some of it can be from solar, but the most reliable energy source is going to come from nuclear. And so we have fast-tracked this approach. We're hoping by the end of this decade, we're going to be able to get that reactor on the moon. At the first part of next year, Maria, Artemis 2, that's our mission to go out and around the moon, is going to happen. And then Artemis 3 will happen, which we're going to land back on the moon. And we're going to stay for 6 days. The longest before that was 3 days. Wow. And then we're going to start the process of building our base on the moon. That's important because to be on the moon and what we learn on the moon is going to allow us to go to Mars. And what we're doing at NASA is, again, they had a whole smorgasbord of priorities. We explore space. And so we're going to go to the moon. We're going to go to Mars. We're going to look at what do we do with our next low Earth orbit space station, right? Because the International Space Station has another several years of life before it comes down. That's important to us. But all of the climate science and all of the other priorities that the last administration had at NASA, we're going to move aside, and all of the science that we do is going to be directed towards exploration, which is the mission of NASA. That's why we have NASA, is to explore, not to do all of these earth sciences.
That is incredible. Look, I've said in the past that President Trump is the most consequential president we've ever seen.
100%.
I can honestly say this administration is the most consequential administration. What you're doing, congratulations, what you're doing on the moon and for Mars, and this is a national defense story. And that's what people need to understand about space. But let me take you right down to earth again, because the Transportation Department has launched a new aviation consumer complaint system. You're working to update air traffic control systems and train more controllers. Secretary, you have not been shy about criticizing former transportation efforts and the Secretary Buttigieg for spiking dropout rates, lowering exam standards, and leaving this mess in our transportation grid. What do you think is most important in terms of making people understand that they're safe when flying?
So first off, we are safe when flying, right? We have the best safety record in the U.S. compared to any other country in the world. But we're using really old technology, Maria. And when it's not safe, people don't fly. And so you see delays or cancellations in your flights way too often across the country. And I think people are fed up and sick of it. And so there's two prongs to this approach. We have a $12.5 billion investment that we got in the big, beautiful bill. I'm going to need $31.5 billion to complete the job. But we're going to begin the process of upgrading listen, we're using copper. We're going to put in new fiber, a new telecom system, new radar that date back to the 50s, new radios, new voice switches. All are going to come online. We have to develop a new software about how we control our airspace, which is going to give us more safety and more efficiency, as we're going to have drones and eVTOLs in the airspace. So that's really important. But we're also 3,000 air traffic controllers short. By the way, the last administration, they knew this, Maria, and they didn't do a damn thing to fix it. Right? Pete Buttigieg was running for president as opposed to doing his job in making sure that we got our air traffic control system modernized and functioning. And so we're 3,000 controllers short. This is not a snap your fingers and fix it, because it takes time to train controllers and then get them certified in the airspace in which they're going to work. And so I'm going to work on 10s and 25s and 100s of people I add on into the system. But the last administration lowered the standard for well-qualified controllers. We've increased the threshold to get the best students into the academy first, to make sure we can reduce the washout rate, which, by the way, is 35%. I'm okay with the washout rate. If you can't do the work, I don't want you controlling. But if you're the best and brightest, let's get them in and get them to control our skies. We're also, you can retire after 25 years as a controller. And so I've offered a bonus of 20% upfront cash for the controller who might retire to get them to stay on and work for us and make sure we can reduce these delays. It's going to take us time, Maria, but we are well on track to see, I think, significant reforms by next summer.
Wow, I love it. Look, I think it's pretty clear to everybody at this point that the last administration and the Obama administration actually were way too busy coming up with attacks on their political enemy, Donald Trump, to actually focus on the issues that matter to the American people. They were way too busy coming up with ways to trap Trump and take down an outsider who was coming in than to actually worry about what was important to the American people. True. That's been clear at this point. Mr. Secretary, thanks very much for your leadership. We're watching your work. We appreciate your time this morning, sir. Thank you.
Well said, Maria. Thank you.
Shawn Duffy joining us.